Everyone, Monica Jazik from RPI Education, and welcome to the Financial Freedom Summit. In this series, you'll hear from 21 experts sharing powerful, little-known wealth building strategies that 98% of people are not using. These interviews are packed with real actionable steps to help you fast-track your financial freedom. So let's jump in, and here's today's guest, Hans Albrecht. Hans, how are you doing?
Fantastic, Monica. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Hans, we're old friends, right? I love working with you. I love the value that you provide. I do have an amazing bio here that I'm going to quickly brief our audience on, and then we're going to get right into it. Okay?
Terrific.
Excellent. So Hans is a veteran options, volatility, and equity fund manager with 3 decades of professional trading experience. He began his career as a professional options market maker with Levesque, Bobo on Toronto and Montreal Options Exchange before running a long-short gamma volatility book at National Bank Financial for nearly a decade. Then he specialized in volatility arbitrage and directional gamma scalping. Yes, folks, this is going to come with a thesaurus and a dictionary, right, Hans?
That's
He,
right.
he later became a portfolio manager at Horizon ETFs, co-managing one of the largest listed options books in Canada. Over the next decade, he managed a broad suite of index sector and commodity funds, including strategies tied to large US cap equities, NASDAQ 100 international equities, gold miners, and energies. Today, Hans runs Options with Hans, a mentoring and options education platform dedicated to helping investors harness the power of options to generate income, protect portfolios with hedges, and trade with structured professional processes. He is also the CEO of Gamma Capital Advisors, a derivatives and option consulting firm that works with RIAs and wealth managers to structure income generation and downside protect strategies. Hans, if you don't know what I just said, Hans is going to tell you all about it because this is awesome stuff. And I think we do need a dictionary with this bio, Hans. And this is why I love having you on here because you do have a way of taking options trading and really kind of breaking that down into layman's terms. And I personally have learned from you, and I'm so excited to share your knowledge and share this strategy that really is not a really popular wealth building strategy, is it?
It really isn't. And you sort of nailed it a moment ago, Monica. These are slightly more advanced topics. And when something gets a little bit more difficult, it gets intimidating, and people really don't want to spend the time or the effort to get into it. And by doing so, they're really leaving a set of tools on the sidelines that really could be helping them over time in terms of cash flow generation, in terms of protection for assets, for that money that you've worked very, very hard to save and invest. And I think they're doing themselves a disservice. So one of the great things is that I've been told that I have quite a knack for explaining things and taking difficult concepts and sort of filtering them down into something that people could really understand. That creates confidence. And that is really one of the great things in investing and trading and the things that we talk about is it's all about confidence. If you don't have confidence, you don't want to get involved.
Amazing. And is that why you think most people just do not use options trading? I mean, you obviously have a really great resume, background, strong background, and then just the confusion and the lack of understanding that people.
Yeah, and I think options sort of get this sort of bad rap, right? And so there's a big spectrum of how you can use options, all the way from very conservative and kind of almost a way to layer existing strategies to add value to existing strategies in very conservative ways, and then all the way to the other end of the spectrum, which is get yourself in a whole lot of trouble. So we really focus on that area. You don't have to do all that other stuff if you do the steady Eddie conservative stuff consistently over time. But it's just human nature. People want to go out there and gamble and lay it on the line, and that becomes more entertainment than it does as a money making endeavor. And that's totally fine, right? If the market for you is excitement and a quick buck, then that's terrific. It may be a replacement for Las Vegas. Me personally, I'd prefer to go to Las Vegas. At least they're going to give me some mediocre steak dinner and a couple of tickets to a show I'll take that instead. Here we have advantages. We have what I call edge. And in using the tools that I teach, you can put that edge to work for you and actually generate some meaningful, benefits over time.
Absolutely. Like we want to show people share your story, how people could really create financial freedom in their life, like you have through options trading. Now, before we get into that, you have a huge background. You've worked in this industry for decades. Your education pertains to this. You've worked for others. What was that pivotal moment in your career that you were like, I'm going to just focus on this and then now I'm going to create, my own business and do my own consulting and my own things for clients. And I'm really going to take my personal options portfolio to the next level to really create that financial freedom in our life. Do you remember what that moment was? Was it one specific moment or sort of an
I do. And it
accumulation?
was a moment that repeated over time. So I started off as a pro market maker, so very kind of quantitative, getting really down deep into the weeds with the number crunching and things that you do as an option market maker, which is basically just trading for a bank for your account and trading options against a number of equity positions. So it gets quite complicated. But when I took that and moved over to the other side of the street, and I managed about $750 million in options income funds. So these were listed ETFs, up to about a dozen of them at different times, might have been 8, 9, 10, a dozen in total, creating income from options for investors around the world. So I sort of had this amazing background of really deep in the trenches kind of options where you had to really learn things from the ground up, way before we had all these wonderful tools that we have today. I remember I used to type things into my DOS program, and I'd bring in my sheets, and I'd be standing there in the option pit, going, "Okay, what can I do here? I can buy, sell stock. I can do all these things." These days, investors have 1,000 times more tools than I ever had when I started out. Of course, that evolved over time, and things got better. But then I moved over to that other side of the street, and I started to do it in much more of a client-facing manner. And I started to realize that the products that were out there are really doing a disservice to people, because these fund companies that come out with, say, covered call funds or option income funds are essentially just sort of saying, well, we're going to keep it very, very simple. We're going to do things very systematically, the same thing over and over and over every month. And we're going to just basically spend most of our time selling the products rather than managing them more effectively. And I was on that side, and I would go to my boss and I'd say, well, we could sort of do things a little bit better here. And he'd say, you know what, Hans, don't broke it. Sorry, he'd say, don't fix it if it ain't broke. We are selling these products. Do not confuse the situation by doing things better. Why would we want to make more money for people when we're making money selling these products in a way that they can understand? So incredible as that is to probably hear for you, Monica, that's just kind of the way the street works. And so I said, I can do this better for people. I can teach them to do the things that these fund companies are doing 10 times better, 100 times better, so that they are actually doing a better job than the actual fund managers with CFAs and all these wonderful degrees behind them, beside their names, do even better than those people and improve the result. And so it really was a kind of an eye-opening endeavor for me, where it's very much Wall Street is very much about what you can do for them, for your advisor, for the fund management company, as opposed to what they can do for you. It's under the guise of what they can do for you. And of course, they want you to do relatively okay, or you'll leave. But it's very, very much. I worked for a big wealth manager once, with a big wealth manager, and he spent 99% of his time getting new money. He did not spend very much time looking at portfolio performance. His number one priority was getting your money, getting new money. No matter how many lovely words they say to you in meetings, that is really what it's all about. And I said, you know what? I can do this better and teach people to do this themselves. And that's going to empower them for the rest of their lives.
That's amazing. So when you kind of took some of these concepts and teaching people to do them for themselves, because not only were you working for these people, but behind the scenes, you were growing your own money in options and you were doing this yourself. Is it really the personal sort of techniques that you kind of personally used for yourself, opposed to what people are getting from this generic advice from larger companies? Is that
That's
really what you're sharing with your students today?
exactly. That's what the students learn. And I mean, I can send you 100 pages of testimonials and video testimonials talking about this stuff where students say, listen, I didn't realize this. I didn't know you could do things this way. In fact, some people say, well, I thought the exact opposite of that from this other mentor or somebody else that they'd listened to. And really, I'm not going to say it's rocket science. It isn't. I'm not doing brain surgery here, but the industry is really focused on making it very, very simple for people in a way that really gives up performance over time versus not doing it. So everything that I do revolves around doing things better. And sometimes that's not trading an option. And sometimes that's sitting on your hands. That's one of my favorite positions, is actually sticking my hands right underneath my butt and sitting on them because I don't see the right opportunity out there. And there's nothing wrong with that. We tend to feel that if we're not doing something right, when you're used to the paid by the hour type role, you feel like you need to constantly be doing things, but it's about making better decisions. It's not about making a larger volume of decisions in your investing life. And so it's all those things that play into making those little decisions that have a big impact in your life. And so it was me just kind of going, well, I think there's a better way to do this. And my fund company doesn't want to listen to me. So I'm going to just go out there and do it on my own. And it's really a recognition of things that very, very few people recognize. And again, it's not rocket science, but it's understanding sentiment. It's understanding option pricing. When option pricing is too low, you don't do A, B, or C. You do E, right? There are different things to do at different times in order to take advantage of either the market not doing very much, which creates an income opportunity, or the market wanting to do more of the work for you. So when I get involved in markets, if I don't want to take any risk, I'm just going to stick my money under my mattress. If I want to take risks, I don't want to do something in the market that's going to limit my upside. So it's about recognizing when the market's doing the work for you, we let it. And when it isn't, we help it out with other kinds of strategies. So it's really very much a pivot to where that potential edge is.
I love that. And a lot of our experts at RPI too have come from these roles. Like they worked for others, like say private equity. And then so they were like traditional financial planners and they're like, hey, like I'm growing all my money in private equity. I'm gonna switch over here. Or insurance, oh, I've figured out how infinite banking works. I'm going to switch my focus over here. And I love how the passion is there is to always share with others what your success story is and also what your real-time advice is. That's what I do in real estate investing. The real-time advice. I'm buying, I'm selling, I'm sitting, I'm waiting. That is so valuable. And for something this complicated, people appreciate that so much because it really shows them what they should be doing in real time. So that's amazing. Now, can you walk us through your strategy and how you use the strategy to fast track your wealth and create financial freedom really in your life?
So it really all starts. So I always tell my students, listen, all roads lead back to the core idea, which is the right index, the right stocks, the right theme, secular themes. Where, take, for example, AI right now, that is a very strong secular theme. Does that mean AI stocks are only going to go up? Well, no, of course. This isn't my first rodeo. I lived through the late 90s where we saw all kinds of mayhem and irrational exuberance. For those of you who remember Alan Greenspan, he was very early and he said, there is a lot of irrational behavior going on out there. And guess what? It continued for another 2.5 years. So we are going to get markets doing what markets do, which is up and down. But we recognize when there's something very, very strong underpinning a trend. And so I'm very much about finding those areas where there's very good cash flow. AI would be a little bit more on the speculative side. That would not be a core part, the very core of my portfolio. But it is in a way, because if you're invested in Microsoft and Amazon and Google and things like that, that actually aren't very expensive on a valuation basis, you are getting exposure to AI. So there are many ways to get that exposure that you're seeking. But it really starts from that very core foundation of quality, return on invested capital, cash flow, profitability, of course. So you start with those, and you're starting off on the right foot. It's a bit like if you don't learn the right grip, if your grip in golf is completely wrong as you pick up the game, you are going to be challenged for the rest of your golfing career because you haven't learned to have that fundamental that strength. So you start with the right basket, and then you start to use options in ways that can both generate cash flow when it makes sense or protect the position, right? Because markets occasionally are going to do what they did in April. They're going to do what they did in during COVID, or what they did in 08, 09. And really what I see a lot of very astute people do, and I know you're going to ask me probably about what wealthy people do at some point. And and we can replicate some of the things that they do, which is they think about capital preservation, because if you can save a big downturn, a big drawdown in your investment funds, then you are, a penny saved is a penny earned. So you can, as much as you can, you want to prevent those drawdowns, step to the sidelines, or create protective strategies. So it's really about starting with that core, having that income layer, having that protective layer, and then moving about in this environment that is always changing in many ways. That's the funny thing. It's funny, I've used this line, I think once or twice in the last couple of weeks, and I've said, over time, economies change. We can see AI didn't exist 100 years ago, not in the way it does now. So, certain industries didn't exist 150 years ago. So economies change, technologies change, our likes and dislikes can change and evolve, but guess what doesn't change? Human behavior, fear, greed, and everything in between. And when you can get better, I have a course called Volatility Ninja. When you can get better at understanding behavior, then you are starting to understand something that is very, very consistent over time. We see it all the time. People get too crazy and then they toss the babies out with the bathwater on the other side of the spectrum. So it's really just kind of working within the sandbox that we're given to find opportunity, and importantly, stay out of, stepping in those piles of what as much as possible by making better decisions.
Absolutely. No, I love that. I love that. So how does this strategy really go against conventional financial planning advice?
Well, financial planning advice is going to tell you, and this relates back to what we talked about earlier, is, your advisor, and I'm not saying there aren't good ones out there, but their goal is to really get as much capital under management as possible. That works for them because they keep a piece of that. For you, they're going to say, well, you should, you're going to be able to take out 4%. And live on that. And for many, many people out there, that is going to be a real challenge. So if you've been lucky enough to have made good decisions with the help of you, Monica, for example, and you have nice assets, you have good real estate, you've done some of the right things, perhaps a business that's done well, then you may be in the fortunate and lucky position of having many, many millions of dollars, and you are going to look at things a little bit differently. But I have people approach me all the time who are sick and tired of their jobs. I believe it or not, I actually have doctors, people with fantastic jobs that are just exhausted and just tired, and they just want to do something that's a bit more chill. Some of the things that I do, that I teach people, are very much along those lines. You can do certain kinds of strategies like this from on your vacation. I mean, it sounds like some sort of weird plug on an infomercial, but you can literally do, wherever you have an internet connection, you can connect to the market. And whenever they're open, you can execute on some of these strategies, and you can do them from Greece or wherever the heck you are. And so this is really, it's about kind of teaching people how to look at things differently, give them that confidence, which they get from me teaching them. They go, oh, that's possible, right? I didn't realize I could do that. And you are now empowering me to be able to do that for myself. And I have a community where people say that all the time. They're like, wow, this is a game changer for me. And it wasn't anything mind blowing. It was just, this is a different way to look at things. So it's a lot of fun. It's very gratifying. And I get people from all walks of life, and I'm a sucker. I have one lady who really can't afford much, so I barely charge her anything. And some people I charge $5.50 an hour. So my wife says, please don't do that anymore. You need to charge for what your time is worth. And I can't help it. I do those things too, but as I get busier, maybe I won't be able to do them as much.
Yeah, it's important to definitely pay for valuable information. Not because I always say, if you don't pay, you don't pay attention. But then there's always times where there's certain people, like knowledge is power, and we have this gift of knowledge. And sometimes we do share it. I know you and I would both probably give everything away for free if people were going to listen to it and it would go. And because you've created that financial independence off of the strategies that we share, that's great. But what's so sad is when you share it with someone, they haven't made that initial investment and they don't think it's important because they didn't pay for it. So that's the funny way to look at it. A lot of people say,
Yeah.
I don't think this education should be charged for or anything. If you guys were true, helpers, you would be gifting it for free. And you know what? I think we all would. We all probably would, but we've seen it too often and we genuinely want to help. Sometimes the first way we can help is get you to make an investment with us, and that will make you a more of an astute student. So
It
totally
will.
love
No,
that.
when you have exactly, Monica, when you have skin in the game, it's funny. Sometimes I'll do a trade and I'll just do it very, very small. And I'll tell my students or people in my community, and I'll say, you know what, I did this just to kind of have it on my radar. When you start to have something on the line, you pay more attention to the details. And you're right. If you give something away, I mean, I have people sign up for expensive programs and they never take a single minute of the course. So it's people work in funny ways. That frustrates me. So I'll remind people, say, listen, do not lose track of what you're
Yeah.
trying to do here because it's very, very easy to do that. For some people, almost like it's like pushing that button, buying the course gives them some sort of cathartic result that just
Yes.
solves something for them in their minds, but it doesn't actually solve their pain point. And you want to
Mhm.
kind of push people to keep improving.
You really got to do the work for sure. And I've taken
You
some of
do.
your courses before. I love them. And I love how hands-on you are in them and you are live training in them and you make sure everyone's questions are answered. I remember you've created even extra sessions too. And you're like, oh, so-and-so's not here, but I know they had a question. I'm going to create a recording for them. Like that's just incredible because I do the same thing. If someone signs up for our courses, we're checking, are they using it? And then if they're not, I will reach out and be like, hey, everything okay? You need to, try to use this or do this. And most people do. And I think it's because they made that investment. So I think that's really,
Yeah. I
really,
mean,
really important.
life gets in the way, right? Life gets in the way sometimes, and many people out there have 9 to 5 real jobs,
Mhm.
and my job is fun. It's trading markets is fun. It's not like a real job, but many people have to sort of focus on their lives and their jobs, and it's difficult to find that extra time to improve oneself. But this is something that really pays you, right? It's an investment into something that pays you like an investment should over time. So it really is, for many people, it's a no-brainer. I have a full mentoring program that's almost $20,000. And I say, listen, you're going to pay an advisor that for a year. Um, for, if you have a reasonably, $1.5 million portfolio, and that you're going to pay the same thing, but you're going to learn the tools that are going to enable you to do way better than that advisor over time. So you have to always think of money spent
Yeah.
versus, now that's my super high end. That's
Mhm.
nowhere near what most people do. So
No, most people are like, there's a lot of people, the education industry is a $1 billion industry. And a lot of them are not designed to help. Like they'll sell the course and then you never see them again. That's why I love your training. I train very much the same way. And our highest end package is $20,000. But in turn, that can increase your net worth by $2 million. So you have to be able to justify. So if you're able to go in there and go, yeah, it's $20,000, but you're going to make like $200,000 cash, or you're going to increase, how do you show that someone actually does, what you say is going to actually work? How can they recoup their investment? Everything is relative. And then you have some great other courses as well, which are smaller, like we do, more how-to courses, and then with a sense of community, which is great. And you could start there, and then as you learn, you grow. Because I really enjoy the diversity that you offer for people, and that's the way we do it as well. Enter small, and when you're ready to grow, then we're ready to help, but we can't help you unless you're ready to really do that work and apply. And I think that's when people really need to feel that pain that you and I have felt in the past, where you kind of made that choice. Okay, I'm ready now to commit. I'm ready now to do something different. And I think that's the choice that only our customers really, really can make when they decide, I'm ready to do this. I want to get the results that Hans has got through option trading. Now they're going to know exactly, what the commitment is and what they could do. So,
And you know what? You're always going to get the question. I always get someone saying, "Well, if you're so successful, why are you doing this? Why are you selling
oh
programs?"
yeah.
And I say, you know what? I'm creating a movement here. I'm creating an empire that I think, my little empire that I think is addressing pain points, which is that 99% of what's out there in the options and investing space is very, very inadequate, plain vanilla, in fact, teaching some of the wrong things. And so I see myself as somebody who's trying to learn to get better at the flash part of it, because selling is important no matter what you're doing, but backing that up with a ton of substance. And that's what people see after wasting money and time in other places. They come to me and they go, "Where have you been all my life?" I'm like, "Well, I'm probably not very visible
Mhm.
to many people. I'm trying to get better at that." But this sort of combination, I feel that there was a space for that in the market for somebody who can actually help folks. And I'm thrilled to be making a lot of headway there.
Yes, no, that's amazing. So, if you are starting from scratch today with no followers, no capital, no connections, what secret move would you use to get ahead first? Fast, not first, fast.
Well, make a commitment to do a little bit of education, because, like anything, there's probably a little bit of science and there's a little bit of art. The art I've gotten from 30 years of having done this, and smacking my head against the wall and having wins and losses and learning through experience. You can get a lot of both of those. You can go to YouTube and watch a video. You're going to get some of the science, some of the how to do a cover call, basic stuff. If you want more than that to actually move the needle for you, you've got to get something that's going to give you a good part of the science, meaning don't get distracted by all the beautiful toys out there. Let's focus on these particular tools. Don't get into trouble with some of the other ones. And then that art part, which I try to extol to you and give to you because of having done it for so long. And I think that's one of the sort of hidden areas. Sometimes I'll just go on about things and a student will say, "Hans, you go on very casually about things that you've seen 1,000 times, but are gold nuggets to us." And then I slow down and I go, "Oh, okay, well, this is what I was talking about." So art and science. So get a bit of education. It doesn't have to be me. It can be anybody who actually knows their stuff. And you can start with a small account. My focus really, if you look at my basic, I have a number of alert services, and I have a leaps program, and I have a crypto program as well, and I'm starting an income program. So once you have the, once you have the holistic sort of package of what I think you should be looking at in terms of investments and options to help your investments, then you're going to have a little bit of something that looks a bit like buy and hold. And then you're going to have that income piece that sort of adds to it. And you're going to have that sort of full package. So you should start by learning small, building your confidence in the right program, and then leveraging some of the tools that you've learned to move the needle for yourself.
I love that. That's great. That's fantastic. So, what do you see the top 1 to 2% wealthiest people and families doing consistently that the rest of the world ignores or avoids?
Well, either by luck or by having come across it, they start to learn some of the hedging, some of the income strategies that are available to us. And more people are discovering this. So when I started Monica, when I started managing my funds, not when I was a market maker, which I did for 15 years. When I started to manage funds, there were probably in North America, there were about maybe $4 or $5 billion in these kinds of funds that I managed. By 2020, there was about 100 billion. So we went from 5 billion to 100 billion. And now they've really started to increase at an exponential pace. So what you're seeing out there is a recognition by more and more people of this potential ability to make a little bit of money while you sleep or while you're on vacation, which is how many income strategies work. You have this decay of option value that sort of accrues to you over time. And so this is sort of I mean, that's the holy grail of what people want. They want to kick back on the beach and make money. And I'm not going to say it's as easy as that. You have to pay a little bit of attention to it. But this is what some of the wealthier people are understanding. They're understanding that there are ways to improve their performance through income strategies. And then there are, of course, ways to improve performance by protecting the downside. And in fact, maybe even capitalizing on the downside so that when your neighbors are complaining about how the markets got smoked, you're saying, wow, I've learned some tools that have really, like a collar. You think of a collar, how that works. That's a protective tool that doesn't cost you much to protect, say, your Microsoft position. It's not that complicated, but when somebody teaches you when and how to use something like that, it becomes this incredible little superpower that you have for your portfolio. So this is the kind of stuff that either wealthy people get exposure to through the right advisor. There aren't that many of them out there. There are some, or people who just have learned from folks like myself and have improved their outcome over time via some of these strategies.
And one bonus question here, I just have to ask. This is interesting about options. Our economy has been very tumultuous for a little too long now, in my personal opinion. Usually things would have sorted themselves out by now. Things have been very uncertain for some time. Real estate has been very, up and down, which could be good and bad. In regards, like, how do you feel the current economy and options trading fit together? Do you think this is an excellent time where people can really get into this now to start, creating this cash flow and building this wealth for themselves?
I think it is. I think there's a kind of, I've been feeling this, especially the last 5, 6 months. I feel there's a sort of sense of, there should be a sense of urgency for folks. I look at what's happening out there in the economy, and I don't think AI is necessarily going to help in many ways for many people. It's going to create these productivity gains. It's going to improve profit margins. But as we know, those types of things make the rich richer. And I think there's going to be a segment of the population that isn't doing as well. And we don't know how that could lead to social unrest. We're already seeing it in very lower entry level positions, people with terrific degrees just not being able to get jobs. This is not a bug. This is now a feature of markets going forward. So I think, and I've been saying this for 7, 8 years, I ran a number of AI, big data type funds. So I saw it early on in the last decade, and I said, listen, if you're being disrupted by technology, by AI in particular right now, you probably want to be invested in those disruptors. They're doing very well. So if kind of almost along the lines of if you can't fight them, beat them sort of thing, you want to really have that exposure to the companies that are changing the world. And I think learning to trade is going to be one of those things that is only going to become more and more interesting to folks as job markets soften, as people look for different ways to perhaps spend more time with their families and make better use of their time.
That's amazing. Yeah, well, our one of our sons actually, we just dropped him off for university, and he has been studying day trading. And my other son who's studying finance is saying things like, "Oh, maybe that's not going to work." He has to do. I said, "You know what? It does not matter. What he is taking it upon himself to learn about a very interesting strategy. I know it's not options trading, it's day trading, but there's so many different strategies out there that people can use." And I looked at my son and I said, "You can make millions of dollars selling pencils." It depends. It's about your willingness to learn, to research, and go for it and use your time to learn these new skills. See if it's for you. Try this out. And no, it's not get rich quick, but it really is about mastering money and taking on new information so you are more versatile in the event that things do change. So that was a great answer. And this has been a great, I think, 45 minutes that we've been chatting here. Is there anything else that you want to share with our audience? I understand you might have a free gift for everyone.
I do. I have a free gift. I've provided you, Monica, with a website URL, an address where you can go and pick up my options blueprint. Cash Flow Insider's Options Blueprint, as well. There's another one called Crush the Premium. So there are 2 ebooks there that you can download. The other one gets a little bit more into some of the concepts of volatility and how it relates to insurance. So I really explain things in a very easy and straightforward way. And then it introduces you from the very, very beginning to how options work, and all the way on to getting into some of the more basic strategies that are, I call them basic, but they're really part of the things that I teach. But we get deeper into the why and the where and the when and all the triggers that people are using to generate that extra bit of income for their portfolio. So it's a great, I like to call them giveaways that don't suck, because a lot of giveaways actually aren't very good out there. And I really am proud of those offerings. And I hope that ultimately it gets them excited about the possibilities, whether it's working with me or working with somebody else. It opens their eyes to a new world out there of possibilities that could really help their financial futures. And that gets me excited.
Well, I've seen your giveaways before and they certainly don't suck. They're very, very valuable. So thank you so much for doing that. And audience, in the email that you watched this video from, their links are inserted there below. And I definitely would opt in and take advantage, because that is such a valuable resource. So thank you so much, Hans, for your time. It's always such a pleasure to speak with you and love learning about this amazing strategy. Thank you, audience, for tuning in. Tomorrow, you'll hear another interview from one of our amazing guests with their actionable financial strategies that will help fast track your financial freedom. So we'll see you all later. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Monica. Thanks, folks.